I am a part of Boulanger Farms, and Janine asked me to talk about transitioning to organic. I have a family farm, and farm with my dad, Gaston, and my brother, Daniel. We've been farming the same land for a long time. Which button is it? Oh, okay. So our farm was established in 1894 by great Gaston Boulanger. And the picture of the farm here is just to show you that we're on some light sandy soil, as you can see on this side of the picture over by the bales. So that kind of dictates what kind of farming we do on our land. We still plow, just like great Gaston used to do. I don't mind plowing. It takes a long time to get a field done. But if you've got a good radio station, or now with the iPhone, once you put the Grand Clarier GPS system, you put that right tire in the furrow, and you just keep going. My brother doesn't like plowing. This could be part of the reason why. He doesn't know I have that picture. We do a lot of disking as far as weed control. Tillage is our main weed control management. We have an older tractor and an older disc. When we run out of time, I talk to my buddy Dwight at Corner Equipment, and we get some bigger tractors and bigger discs. And that was this spring when we were really behind schedule. Thank you, Dwight at Corner Equipment. But according to Roy's slides, I can't afford this, so we go back with the older equipment. Typically what we try to do is get our fields looking something like this, try and control the weeds as much as we can in the spring. We do not do very much fall tillage unless it's something that we're planning to break up, or there might be a lot of quackgrass or something like that, but most of our tillage happens in the spring. We have an old international press drill. As long as gravity keeps working, we should be okay. And that one chain doesn't fall off, we're all right. Our blockage monitors aren't very aren't very good, but as long as you check every couple of rounds, you'll be okay. Luckily, where we farm in that sandy soil by Grand Clarier, we don't have a lot of grain farms around us. So weed control for us really isn't too much of an issue. Again, with plowing and the tillage that we use, this is a field of flax from a couple of years ago that we had plowed, disked twice, and sown. So we're pretty lucky that way. We have an unfair advantage as far as weed control goes. Help is a bit of an issue around the farm. My dad's in transition mode to retirement. And my brother Daniel and I try to do as much as we can, but I had to get some younger help this year. So I had my 9-year-old daughter Ainsley driving the tractor. This is the beauty of having buddy seats. So I can sit in the buddy seat and she can drive. As far as fertility goes, this is our fertility program. We have about 200 cows on the farm, and we typically calve starting sometime around the 10th of April. Our cows get weaned usually in late December, early January. We background them till the spring. For the 7 or 8 years we finished all our cattle, but last spring we were really short of feed. Weren't sure what kind of pasture we were going to have, so we actually marketed a lot of the calves in the spring. And so that's our fertility program. We use the manure. This field, I'd shown that slide already once. This same field was sown to green feed this year, and it was a 30-acre field right by the yard that we had applied manure to the year before, and that was an oat-pea mix, and it did about 3 bales to the acre. As far as the certification of our land goes, we started certifying our land in 1999. So other than manure, these fields have not seen any commercial fertilizer for, it'll be 17 seasons. As far as the livestock part of it goes, again, talking about fertility, we try to feed our cows out of the yard as much as possible. The calves obviously stay near the yard and get bedded on a frequent basis, so we have some manure to spread. But otherwise, we try to put our bales out about half a mile from the yard, and they've got some bush and some natural shelter there, so that works out well for us. We've been, here's a picture of our quad sitting in an area that had some bale grazing / pseudo bale grazing. You can see there's a lot of production there as far as grass goes. So, transition tips from Boulanger Farms. Ask others that have done it before. When we were certifying back in 1999, we went to a lot of the OPAM meetings at the time. We talked to Manitoba Agriculture and tried to find people that had done it before. Be flexible and try to work with Mother Nature. For us, since fall of 2010, it's been extremely wet, and so we've had to try and grow some other crops that can be sown a little bit later, like millet. That field that I showed the picture of Dan getting stuck with the plow, that was on May 24th, and that was on our highest ground, so we've been pretty wet out there. I suggest that you try to use forages and legumes as much as possible. With all of our cereal crops, we're trying to put some sort of legume, whether it's clover or peas, to try and keep the nitrogen cycling and keep it moving. Polycrop mixes have been very popular. We've grown a few, and we'd like to grow more and do some more intensive grazing. This is one of the things that we've talked quite a bit over the last several years. It's just a matter of doing it. I wrote down your alternative crops. According to Roy's presentation, we should be growing winter wheat. Unfortunately, we didn't sow that last fall, so it's hard to put winter wheat in the spring, but we are looking at growing some different crops. And effective and efficient use of manure. I think that's part of the learning curve that we've experienced on our farm, is that typical for most cattle farms, the manure goes on the closest fields. We've really tried to get some of that manure farther away from the farm and use it more effectively so we can grow some different crops. As far as the whole thing goes with crops, when we were transitioning, we used to try and grow a third or a fourth crop on the same land, and basically on our sandy soil we ran out of nutrients. So now we're into more of a break up a field of alfalfa, sow a crop, sow a second crop, and then sow it back down. Try and get that alfalfa back in rotation as quickly as possible. And then my last tip for transitioning to organic is to spend some time at the lake. And there's my 3 kids.
Especially during mustard season bloom.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Let's go to the lake. Don't worry about it till you get back.
Oh, that's great.
There it is in 6.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mark. Introduce yourself, please, Scott.
Deal with their stuff. Scott Beaton, I farm close to Rosser, just northwest of Winnipeg. Mark's a more captivating speaker than I am. His farm was established in 1890 something, and I'm about 120 years behind.
But you're with us! Yay!
So that means I'm a first generation farmer, which questions my intelligence and take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. So the first slide I've got, and you probably can't read what it says on the bottom. This is a presentation that I've made for the diploma class. I got to go talk to them next week, and so it says, now why in the hell would you want to do that? And it's actually pronounced more like, why in the hell would you want to do that? He didn't say it when I was doing this, which I was surprised at. It was actually about 2 weeks after, so I'll show you when that happened later on. But we had a lot of that lately. You don't need to know that. The reasons I decided to switch to organic, so kind of will follow Mark's format. Yeah, he's done this before. Crop rotation, I guess I always believed in having a good diverse crop rotation, but you don't really get paid to do that in a conventional system. It seemed like if you could grow soybeans for 20 years in a row, that probably would be the best way to do it, and you would rely on chemical inputs and a million other things that I didn't really want to do that badly, to a huge extent, in order to support that system that couldn't support itself. So point number 2, I didn't like spending summer on a sprayer. I only did it a couple of years and decided it wasn't for me. We started putting down, I've never done fungicide on my own farm, but I was spraying for neighbors, and you got on doing herbicide very early in the spring, and then started putting nitrogen on later in the season, and fungicide in the fall, and you never really got off that thing.
I wish everyone would rather be at the lake than on the sprayer.
Yeah. So there's a line right here, And this is one variety of soybeans, and this is another variety of soybeans over there. And so that was the field I think that about 2 years before I started transitioning, I was combining. And that was the level of diversity I had on that 200-acre field. And it didn't make any sense to me. I think that's most of what I need to say there. Narrow margins, you heard from Roy, I guess, and I quit conventional farming a couple of years ago almost. And I think the margins are only getting worse since then, so that's what's going on. So this is the first piece I bought. This was the year 2006, I guess, when I started thinking I should be a farmer rather than take home a check every 2 weeks. There's another half section now, and another 20-acre piece that I rent as well. That'll be organic for this coming year. I liked this picture. These bloody seagulls, every time I moved over, they were in the next swath behind me eating the worms. This is a transition piece. In this picture, I'm seeding fall rye this past fall. There's a lot of points there, and I don't need to talk about all of them, but yeah, I guess not being a price taker and being a price setter is a good thing. No problem. I don't have too much to say. This was the new, or the group that wishes the CWV was back, and I'm a part of that group. The bar on the right hand side shows what, I guess the top of each bar is the wheat pork price, and so as of February 2014 it was up over $400 an acre, but for some reason we as farmers were still we were experiencing a price decline in what we were getting at the elevator, and that's because the elevators and the rail all of a sudden were taking a substantially larger bite than they've taken for the last quite a few years. And so I think we have a bit of an opportunity to get away from that system. I grew the crops on the left, oat, canola, winter wheat, soybean, hemp. That was kind of my rough rotation prior to getting into this organic stuff, and now I guess I do have a little more diversity, and this is the rotation that I'm planning, not one that I've ironed out all the kinks in yet, so feel free to let me know that there's problems with that, because I'm going to do it. And, so I don't need to tell you in 7 years all the problems that I had with that, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
We'll look forward to bringing you back.
Roy, if you're still here, if you could leave. I am in the class that, yeah, my equipment cost per acre has skyrocketed since I've decided this was a good idea for me. I do think I can get away with one tractor, and so this is the one that I've got. On the back of that, I guess the thing I wanted to show, and I didn't have another picture, was a roller crimper. So that can go on my front 3-point hitch and pull behind a planter. I've got a 15-foot breast drill that I can pull behind to seed with into a little bit of trash or some clover or fall rye at flower time. 2 minutes. This is a bigger seeder. I'm seeding fall rye, so this is a transition piece. That was last year's pea canola mix. Sorry, I'm seeding spring wheat actually. And I guess what I want to show is that field wasn't a disaster. I've got a picture later on if I get to it in the next 2 minutes. This is my Super Bee. It's very economical. It works on the same principle as Mark's seeder. We're seeding into, so this is oats in T2 going into hemp. I'm going to skip ahead a bit here. This is a chaff collector working in some stuff.
Good to see chaff collection, handy for weed reduction, eh?
It is good to see. I don't have one. I just want one. we got shifted into 6th gear there. So what I feel like I should talk about here, so this is my first year transition. I grew hemp on this. I picked out one particular field that I felt worked very well. So this is a hemp crop, and so I seeded this. I did a pre-emergent application of chemical, and that kept it a very, very clean field through the year. It was fertilized, and so at seeding time, that was my last restricted product application. The piece on the right is what it looked like just prior to harvest, and I guess I wanted to show you. So this is sometime in July. There were weeds starting to appear, but did any of them turn into anything? No. Did any of them set seed? Very few. So I like hemp in a transition crop setting because it's so competitive. When there's a market for conventional hemp, I would encourage you to go down this road. Right now, it's a tough road to hoe. So the T2, I showed you that picture of seeding, so I'm going oats into my hemp. There's a substantial nutrient uptake that hemp goes through in order to grow that monster of a plant. But it doesn't really remove a lot of the crop because you're taking out 15 or 20 bushels of hemp seed, and everything else, if you can get it back into the ground, or in this case, I just seeded into it in the spring and removed very little.
Did you chop it before you seeded into it, or?
Nope, this is seeding right here.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was your spacing on that you didn't have trouble with?
7.5 inch.
You didn't have trouble?
No, I stopped a few times and swore about it, but it wasn't the worst thing. I did 80 acres in 5 hours, and I didn't mind.
And sorry, Scott, how was the year after the residue from the hemp?
Fine. It's all laid down. It broke off right at the soil surface as I was going over it, and it laid down, and I didn't do anything at all after. So I seeded this oat crop. This was probably the highest paying crop I've ever grown, or the highest netting crop, because I used $9 of seed per acre to put my oats into it, and I drove by it every 3 weeks and decided I don't need to do anything here, and then I went back and combined it at 7 miles an hour because it was thin, but it still was an 80 bushel crop, and so I would do that again in a heartbeat.
What about where the combine dropped the
I chopped it.
residue?
Yeah.
You didn't have trouble with the plugging in those areas?
No, I chopped the hemp, so there was nothing abnormal in there.
Shoot it up well enough you can have trouble with it.
Yeah, I wouldn't plan on doing this, but it has. We've grown hemp 4 times and chopped it twice, so it's possible.
I don't want to cut you off, so I got to urge you to go through.
We can do questions after.
We will have some more questions later.
So this was 2015. This picture's taken June 23rd. This was a mix of faba bean, soybean, pea, oat, and radish. The radish and the oats went through the mid-row banders, and everything else went in the seed row. I was very happy with how it went. This is July 14th, the same field. So the oats kind of did their thing, but they left lots of room for everything else to grow. I did a bad job cleaning the canola or the peas, as you can see, and ultimately some of the wild oats in the field were the reason why I decided to work it under. So this was July 22nd that I did that. The fab beans were flowering, which is kind of when you want to work them under anyways, so it worked out fairly well. September 7th so this was about 2 weeks after emergence of the second green manure crop that year. And when I was seeding this, the Hutterites across the road were combining their barley, and one of them stopped to help me fill the drill, and I was putting this is a sunflower, oat, pea, radish mix, and so he stopped to help me pour a little bit of this into the auger, and I was filling the drill, and he helped me for about a minute before he had enough questions and I answered them, and he thought, this is ridiculous, and he went and waited on the side of the field for the combine to be ready, then continuing to help me. So that was pretty good. So this was it frees up. I left it on the surface, and I'm planning on frost seeding in a clover to this in March, and then I'll roll it down and seed my hemp or beginning of June, mid-June kind of thing is the plan. My last slide is the lake as well.
Nice.
I'd rather be at the lake. I don't want to sit on the sprint.
We all love nature. Thank you.
No, go ahead.
Okay, nice and quick to Ian. Maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit while he's getting it set up.
Which is the button bar?
Top one there, or something.
Yeah, my name's Ian Drossart. I, with my wife and parents, operate Hell Park Farms. We're just 12 miles southeast of Brandon here, on the east side of Brandon House.
Nice.
We've been there since our family since 1879. Now we've got organic grass-fed finished beef, and we've got certified organic grains. Flax, oats, rye, wheat are kind of the main crops that we do. So I guess we lost it, Luke.
Something happened.
We have those flowers on our farm, but that's not going to help with this presentation.
It's like the radio. You gotta stand just the right distance from the antenna. Okay, let's see.
That works.
Yeah, you made the thing at the bottom go away at least.
This is the way we started transitioning to organic. We thought we were going to grow echinacea, which was a medicinal herb, and we started this end of the 90s. And I guess it's a cautionary tale that we found that if you're going to transition with crops that you know how to grow already. Yeah, this was a 2 to 3 year root crop that we really never made anything on. We had a lot of help from kids weeding this to try and keep it reasonly clean, and as Janine was pointing out in her presentation before, it was kind of going against the principles of diversity in organics because we were trying to meticulously weed it. And the other thing I probably did is I probably convinced some conventional neighbors that they never wanted to go organic, if that was how much work it was going to be. So some of these kids came and helped us for a day or two, and remember the one kid that we could sure fix this with Roundup, he said. Anyway, so that would be one of my key pieces of advice: is stick with crops that you're comfortable with, that you have a reasonable success growing on the farm, or people have in the area that you're thinking of setting up in. No matter how well you plan, you're going to have some issues. You're going to have days where things maybe not, or years where things don't necessarily go as planned. But this is just a couple of bulls that decided they're going to have a scrap when we were moving them. And also, too, this is where you want to be away at the lake where the wild mustard's flowering. So you are going to have some issues with fertility and weeds. But I think what we try and do, and as you saw with the prices that Roy was talking about, that's what you got to focus on. You look at the weeds, but you think, okay, that crop underneath, it's still worth a lot more than the conventional, and it's still going to make more money than if I just go in there with a discer and make it look nicer, but it's not going to help my bank account at the end of the year. So the other thing to point out too is at some point you can go to all these conferences, read all the literature that's out there, but at some point you're going to have to take that first step and say, okay, I'm going to try this area, and that's what we did. We gradually transitioned in. We started in about 2000, I think, with the echinacea, and then from there just gradually got in. Just getting comfortable that, okay, this system will work. Like, I may have some issues with weeds and fertility, but overall it'll work, and I guess it's going to depend on each one of you as you're transitioning. How, like, some people might want to do everything all at once. We chose to transition actually our crops first. I thought that was going to be the easier transition, and then the livestock was going to be harder. And I've actually found that the livestock, we probably had better luck with the cows and getting them transitioned and figuring out homeopathic so we can use on different health issues, and realizing that there hasn't been that many health issues. So that's been a positive aspect of that as well. this is just a couple of, I'm not sure if you can see this from the back, just a couple of fields on the left. There's our rotation. Basically, we transitioned using alfalfa, and that was good because we had the cattle herd. So really our transition years, we weren't really taking any kind of loss in price or anything because we were marketing it all through the cattle. So we generally go about 3 years in alfalfa, then we'll break that up, then we'll do flax, oats, then do a green manure, then rye or wheat, and then back into the alfalfa. So that's kind of our cycle right now. And as Mark said, we found that if you go any longer than a couple of years, you're going to, on our soil, we're going to have weed issues and probably some fertility issues too. So. And on the right here, that was a learning curve. We'd started into zero till probably the early 90s, and to go back in with a disc to a field, that was after what we were used to. So that took a little bit of getting used to, and that's just transitioning a new system. It is going to look a little bit different, but we've got used to that again. And I guess another message I would have is just because something works, like you go to a conference and something works somewhere down in the States, know your soil type, know your rainfall, know your climate, because just because it works, even what Mark can do with plowing on our clay, I'm not going to get the same results as what they can do. So really know your land, and if you're listening or getting advice from other people, know that what the benefits of their farm and their soils are, and look at your own system as well. But you do talk to others, talk to as many people as you can. They're trying to do things similar to what you're trying to do. This is just a picture of flax on the left that we were fairly successful with keeping clean. And then on the right, we got a group of cows that we used some of our green manures. We've started to graze them and trying to keep more nutrients in the soil. Just to wrap up, this is a quote that my daughter has up in her room. Never give up on a dream just because of the time it will take to accomplish it. The time will pass anyway.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Well, we can leave that one up to inspire us during Jason's presentation, because he's going to show us all his pretty pictures this afternoon.
Yeah, a little bit later. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Peters. I work for Craigford Farms, also known as Poplar Grove Farm down in Winkler. We're a pretty large potato farm that started transitioning into organic, it would have been about 16 years ago now, in 2000, was our first 20-acre field. And since then, we've transitioned probably close to 2,300 acres since that time. So we do have a bit of experience with transition. My personal knowledge is a little limited. I've only been there for 2 years. But I've asked lots of questions and picked up on a good chunk of the history of what the guys have done in the past. So I thought I'd just share maybe a couple of strategies that we've used in the past with you, for better, for worse, and take and do with them what you will. But I think one of the ones that we've probably used the most has been alfalfa. So those 2 or 3 years prior to your first organic crop, alfalfa works really well for cleaning up weeds, for cycling some of your nutrients, and it's really worry-free, especially if you can end up selling the stuff off the stem. One of the other strategies that we've used is, and this is by far the most expensive one, but we find works really well, especially if you're going into a high-value crop, is 2 years of green manure. So typically our green manures are peas and oats, and we'll do the 2 years prior, we'll grow a pea and oat crop, we'll disc it down, and then the following year we'll grow peas and oats as well. And even though you don't get any revenue off of this, it is very expensive, but then at least your soil is fully loaded, and there's potentially as clean as they'll ever be going into that first organic crop. So it is costly, but there's lots of benefits if you can make the cash flow work. Probably the third strategy is to grow that first year of transition, the T1, would be to grow a grain crop or a spelt crop of some sort to get some revenue for that first year. And then the second year would be green manure going into your first organic crop. So those are, I guess, a few of the strategies we've tried. I don't know which one would we prefer. I would probably prefer the alfalfa. It's the easiest, it's the least least headaches as far as a management point of view. But if you're looking to prime your soil, especially, I think we're a little bit unique in that we do grow potatoes, and so those 2 green manure years tend to be the best for that first transition, or that first organic potato crop. Yeah,
Sounds good.
Probably good.
Is soil testing part of your program?
Yes, definitely. We do a lot of soil testing with potatoes, and so that naturally carries over into this. So what we like to do is soil test that first year before we go into transition, and that will help determine whether we go the route of 2 green manures or whether we go the route of a grain crop. If the fertility is there, then we're going to put in something that's going to bring us money. And then we like to soil test, even that second year as well, so that we know the green manure, and then we can apply some compost as well in the fall if we need to, just to make sure that soil is ready for that first year of organics.
Yes, sir, there's a question back there.
When you grow your green manures 2 years in a row like that, do you leave the soil black after you work with it the rest of the year, or put anything?
I believe they've done both in the past. I know they've done just peas and oats and then disc it and then leave it. But what we've started doing in the last few years is growing barley in between as a catch crop, barley or rye. But basically, the idea is we want to have something growing there for as many months of the year as we can. And that's going to help keep those nutrients in that top layer, that top profile.
How about disease on potatoes? Like I've seen my neighbors grow potatoes and the planes going over once a week. How do you manage to stay ahead of that?
Well, how much time have you got? You've been here for a while talking about that one.
Well, their good compost plays a big role in that, reducing pathogens by promoting biodiversity, the healthy ones.
Yes, it's really a systems approach using compost tea. We actually do a lot of dealings with Dale Overton over here. And just having healthy soil. That's, I think, where it starts.
You tend to have a lot of sandy soil in your operation, but you have a range of soil types as well, right? But
Yeah.
mostly sandy?
But it's mostly sandy. It's mostly potato, I guess, that kind of that potato ground.
But tell them a little bit about your rotation, because you grow much more than just potatoes.
Yeah, that's right. In the organic rotation, I guess the typical rotation for us would be potatoes, hemp, and then followed by a green manure. So, I mean, potatoes are basically what drives our rotation. And so, yeah, so potatoes, the hemp is it's a good in-between crop we find. I think the guys at the office, if they could grow potatoes every 2 years, they would, but that's just not feasible. So the hemp we found has actually been a really good in-between crop for us. It seems to take advantage of some of the nutrients that are a little bit lower in the profile, but potatoes tend to take them out of the top, and the hemp has a nice deep taproot that tends to go down a little bit further to get some of the nutrients down there. And then the green manure year is really, that's where we focus on our fertility for those next 2 years. So the plow down, we count on about 80 pounds of N per acre, usually from our pea oat mix. We've seen it up to as high as 160 this year. We had some really productive green manure fields, which was really good to see. And then usually it's topped up with a little bit of compost.
Why the difference in the higher amount of in the green manure? Why did you have such a difference in this year?
Part of it is the field itself. I mean, it's going from 4,000 pounds to 6,000 pounds, say. So on some of our weaker fields, the growth isn't there. It just doesn't come.
More material with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically that's kind of what the thinking is there.
Jason, are you guys doing after green manure? Are you guys doing your soil testing in the fall or in the spring?
We soil test in the spring before we do our green manure, because in our thinking, that's theoretically the lowest point of fertility in that 3-year rotation, and so we want to know, what can we do to bring that back up, and how much do we need of each thing to make it work.
Yes?
Are you importing any organic nutrients, or is it all green recycling?
We've looked at importing like organic fertilizers. They're very expensive, so we haven't found a good source that's affordable yet.
Other than, tell them what you are using.
Well, we use like Dale's compost tea and fish fertilizer, and that's been, how much on the nutrient side. Like it's not like a 1300, but there definitely is some nutrients in it. And
the bacteria that's in it also helps make bioavailable what's in your soil more available. So it's an important input.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Jason? Oh, thank you very much, Jason.
Okay,
That
thank
was
you.
great. And I don't know if your family's anything like mine, but it's challenging to work as a family. And I think it's so important in farm operations to do that. So I'm really delighted that Darcy and his son Donovan have agreed from Hickson Farms to present together. So the younger of the team is going to start off. So please welcome Donovan Hickson.
Thanks, Janine. So unfortunately, I didn't prepare a presentation. I thought I could just mooch off my dad's the whole time. So I'm just kind of winging it up here, but a little bit about myself. I'm 20 years old. I do farm with my dad. I'm a second-year agribusiness student at ACC. So in a few months, I'll be out into the real world again. And all these guys had pictures of going to the lake and stuff like that, and just how age and generations work on the young ones. So I have to stay home all summer and do the work. And Dad, he's the one that gets to go to the lake. So.
He's earned it.
So my take on transitioning farming is a little different. When Dad was transitioning our farm, I was pretty little. And if I did have anything to do with it, I don't remember it because, again, I was quite young. But 2 years ago in 2014, a couple neighbors of mine, they gave me the opportunity to rent some already certified organic farmland. So I'm just going to talk about kind of transitioning already organic farmland into how I wanted my operation to run. So 2014, again, kind of a horrible year to start farming. It was really, really wet, and I got about 25% of my crop in on 3 quarters. And so with that wet year, the weeds really took off, and I kind of had some setbacks with that. So luckily, the guys I was renting from, they had a lot of good crop histories of what they were growing in rotations and kind of what they did for practices, and so I could look off of those and kind of get an idea of what I needed to do for our rotation. And another thing I did was soil testing. My first year in the spring, I soil tested before I planted anything, so I could kind of look at what was deficient and which fields I needed to do a green manure plow down on. Because when you're just starting out and you have little to no equity and a lot of expense that needs to be paid, it's a huge risk to just kind of walk into it blind, where you don't really know if I'm going to get a 5 bushel to the acre crop or if I'm going to get an 80 bushel to the acre crop. So I really wanted to do the soil testing to kind of get a bench point of what I was looking at. So with that, that definitely lowered my risk a lot, and I've been doing green manure plow downs, mainly peas with oats or barley, trying to get some biomass built up and having an aggressive crop to help choke out the weeds, and just kind of starting a rotation that fits within our program. We try and do like a 1 in 3, 1 in 4 kind of deal. But for me also, networking to start off was a big thing for me. Where I'm from, we have quite a tight-knit community of organic farmers that farm within miles of each other. So I had lots of knowledge that I could rely on in helping me get started. And Dad, he was a huge help too, with giving me advice and how to make things work and everything. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with transitioning farming. Thanks.
Okay, now the important part is for you to think about your operation and what questions you have for these guys. Oh, Darcy's going to talk too. Great, both of you.
You have a presentation.
This is my lucky day. Janine's just kind of hinted we're out of time. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Darcy Hickson, and I farm with Donovan and my wife Wendy in clay loam soils just a few minutes northwest of Brandon in the municipality of Elton. And I made a presentation here last year, and I see quite a few familiar faces here, so you're going to have to suffer through some of the same slides. I'm just going to cherry pick a few slides to talk about here, and hopefully they'll complement what you've been hearing the other fellas here talk about. This is the age of selfies, and this was my Ag Days selfie from last year. So take that, Mr. Prime Minister. Transitional agriculture is kind of no man's land, isn't it, where you're comfortable with the conventional farming system, and you're trying to anticipate how you're going to go through a few years of a learning curve to get through no man's land to the other side and learn about organic farming along the way. Our farm was founded by my grandparents in 1919. My grandfather came to the farm after the war, and this is the first known photo of farming activity going on in our farm, so I'm pretty proud of this picture. That's my mom and dad that bought the farm in 1947, and they're retired and living here in Brandon.
All right.
This is a good one to stop at for a minute. This is one thing that hasn't really been touched upon this morning, but I'm going to for a moment, and that is the importance of good record keeping. And so it doesn't matter whether you're calving cows or whether you're planning your transition out around your seeding equipment and harvest equipment, you need to detail on paper or on electronic devices of some kind what you're doing. And that way, when you have your organic inspections every year, you can say with confidence that on this date, I did this function. And that way everybody knows what you've been doing, and everybody can sign off that you're following the organic protocols to transfer your farm into organic farm production. So it's really important. And the beauty now of these handheld devices, you can take pictures on the go, you can type in memos into your phones. There's really no excuse now for not keeping accurate on the go messaging to yourself, so that when you get doing your office work in the office, what you've really been up to. Now, the booby trap, that was a slide that I used last year, and it's important to look at this slide and realize that that bomb is going to go off whether you're on the outside of the door or the inside. And we associate booby traps with the prank where your friend puts the water balloon or the pail of water up above the door when you open it. This is more a booby trap where you're going to do something really foolish that you're thinking about, maybe I shouldn't do this, and it could hurt your organic transition. So you always need to be thinking really carefully about even the little things about sweeping out the truck box and what you did with that conventional seed grain, just little things like that. And these are the booby traps that you really need to be watching for. So I am going to outline quickly a couple of ways that we transitioned on our farm. And the first one was to take a field of alfalfa that was in production and then march it along through the transition cycle into organic farm production. So this all started in 1998, where we planted alfalfa that wasn't undersowed to any nurse crop, and we took one cut of hay that year. And then in 1991, there's your transition year one. That was the year that we developed a relationship with an organic certifier. They came to the farm and inspected this field, and that was transition year one. In 2000, that was transition year two. The organic inspection was done again. That was year two with our organic certifier. And then in the fall of that year, after taking the cuttings of alfalfa, we put the tandem disc into that field. And so there you are. In 2001, we had a certified organic crop of red spring wheat. And just one thing of note about that was a extremely high protein crop year that year, and the protein level in that wheat was 16.7%. And it was extremely hard to market because it was so high in protein that year. There was very little low protein grain to blend with it, so it was actually hard to market.
What about falling number? How was it on it?
The falling number on it was fine. It was well into the high 300s. It was fine. I don't recall, but it wasn't an issue. The advantage of using a field of alfalfa, we just heard from Jason a few points about that, but the beauty of using alfalfa is that it's a really low maintenance thing. When you break it up, it'll give you a clean field that you have an opportunity to work with, so that you can plant a cash crop and have a really low weed pressure year to get yourself in the game and make you feel proud about what you're doing. And it's kind of a boring thing. You plant the alfalfa and then wait a few years, and then finally you're in the game with a certified organic field. But it's a low maintenance thing. It's a great carbon sink. We talk a lot about this with global warming. You're doing something good on that end of it too. The disadvantage is that you're going to have to really know your field well and make sure that you have weed issues that aren't going to be a problem when you bring the field back into production. Like weeds like quackgrass, the alfalfa is not going to help you get rid of your quackgrass. You're going to still have quackgrass problems when you, in all likelihood, will have quackgrass issues when you bring the field into grain production. That was some compost tea that we were doing in 2001. That's what I call my Freedom to Farm Day, when we took all the part chemical containers and the dog Brand and I took them to a recycling depot and got rid of them. So this is a different way that you can consider transitioning a field into organic farm production. This was a field of red spring wheat that was undersowed to clover, and so you can see by the slide, you can see the greenness of the clover in the bottom. That the yellow strip in the center is a fence line, and that was interesting, where the clover was content to sit low in the crop and not overtake the red spring wheat the way it did everywhere else in the field, and I thought that was kind of interesting. There was still biodiversity, and some of the best topsoil had blown into that fence line and created quite a bit different pattern of the way that the clover interacted with the wheat in that crop year. So then in 2002, there's our TR2 year, where we're plowing down the clover as a green manure plow down. And in 2003, there we're harvesting red spring wheat.
Beautiful crop.
Yeah. So the advantages and disadvantages of that kind of a rotation, I think the obvious disadvantage is that you're going to have suppressed yields in all likelihood. Maybe some of you are a little better at the wizardry of that than I am, but you're probably going to have reduced yields, and so you will not have the cash flow there to handle those 2 years with limited production, but you still have the expense. So that's an issue, isn't it? The advantage of it is that the clover plowdown will probably give you a pretty good start at a nutrient level that you'll be able to produce a real nice crop in your first year of organic grain production. Repurposing some old equipment. There's an old Valmar that was used in the old Avidex and Trefland days. And why can't you repurpose an old piece of machinery like that to blast clover or alfalfa as an overseeding project on an organic field? The transition of livestock. I think livestock are a real important component of an organic farm, and I know that not everyone wants them, and not everyone has an opportunity due to the type of farm that they're farming to have cattle around, but I think that there are really good synergies between livestock and the opportunity to have grasses and haylands and also the opportunity to have the manure to do natural nutrient cycling. And I know in government circles, manure is often looked at as one rung up the ladder from nuclear waste, but it's still a valuable component to farms. Our kids had certified organic steers a couple of years in 4-H. We were pretty proud of that. Just to sum up, and I know some of the other fellows have talked about some of these points too, but we'll just go over them quickly. Network. Find people that are thinking about either doing organic farming or thinking about doing it. Team up with them in a buddy system to keep yourself encouraged and to look for ways to improve and to keep your project going forward. Nobody knows your farm like you do. You know your soil textures, you know what will grow there and what won't. And I know we already heard this from another panelist that, you know, just if you go to a convention and hear somebody that has something that's just a marvelous idea on their farm, it might not work for you. And you need to have the objectivity of what you're doing to know that that's a nice idea, but it's not going to work for me. At the start, pick something that's easy to grow, that you love to grow and you know about. And I fell into the trap too of trying some exotic things that didn't work out very well, and I would have been just as far ahead to have grown oats, which we know what to do and we can feed them to our cows. Go slow, try one field at a time and see how it goes. And lastly, be proud of your effort. You know, if you're enthused about it and trying hard, that goes a long ways in your neighborhood. When your neighbors see that you're proud of what you're doing and that you're working hard at it, they'll come on board too. And that's the other thing too, is that we all have to live together in our communities, and I think that if you have a positive attitude, that'll solve a lot of problems.
It does.
Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. We do have time for a few questions, so we have quite a lot of experience sitting here. Please go ahead.
Quite a few fellows talked about using alfalfa in the transition. Like our area is pretty low in phosphorus. Are you any concerns about nutrient transfer of phosphorus out of your soils? Excuse me.
Any concerns about nutrient transfer of phosphorus out of the soil? There's soil, Raggie's in the interlake, very low in phosphorus. So I guess alfalfa takes it up, right? So, but you're working it back in, right? Well, you're not exporting it up. Oh.
Just take it.
Yeah, they should be all on.
Oh, top of the bottom.
They're already on.
There you go.
There you go.
Hello. Yeah, I think, so the question was with respect to phosphorus removal if you're using alfalfa in your transition years, and I think for me that's been the reason why I've steered clear of it, because if you're taking it off and baling it and removing it, you are effectively exporting a fair bit of phosphorus in that. For these guys, I think they probably end up spreading their manure back on those fields, so I guess you're taking a few pounds off in your meat, but otherwise you're fairly safe. I'll let you guys talk to that if you like.
Does anyone else want to answer that?
Top one there, I just flipped off, sorry.
You should just be able to leave it.
Yeah, we do have challenges, but again, we're putting our compost back on, so it's, but yeah, FOSS is an issue. And I think the other thing with FOSS is it needs microbes in the soil to help release it, so the more you get your soil developed, I think you're going to have, because if you look at even conventional farms, I mean, when you add FOSS in about the first 3
And I'll just add that I have seen a lot of organic operators in the thousands of farms I've been on use soft rock phosphate in various forms, because over the long work, like Nicholas Lampkin's research in organic farming, is that is an input that's needed in organic agriculture if you're exporting your alfalfa. But someone else wanted to respond?
How much of it being usable though over a number of years?
Well, I think the point that was made that it's important to have a living soil with a lot of soil microorganisms because they help make the phosphorus bioavailable.
If you have a perfect scenario, how much of, if you are adding the rock phos, how much of it is being broken down?
But the operators that I've worked with, they say that it's giving them what they need over about a 10 to 15 year period.
So it's not till 10 to 15 before you start seeing stuff?
No, you see it, I mean, it lasts over a 10 to 15 year period. It's often 1 to 2 years. Anyone else? Has anyone on the panel applied it, or?
Has anybody tried a buckwheat plow down, green manure plow down? I'm thinking of doing a buckwheat fallow bean mixture this year.
I know that the root auxins that buckwheat gives off does help make the phosphorus more bioavailable, so that would be a good thing to do. I usually see that in light soils, sandy soils, more than heavier soils.
Currently putting it into green manure, it's the best form. Like once you harvest, you take most of it.
Yeah, and the Organic Field Crop Handbook talks about that. I think they talk about 3.5 bushels per acre for a seeding rate for that heavy. And it's a really good smother crop. If any of you have problems with leafy spurge, buckwheat is one of the few things that can smother it out. Dale?
I know Tim Livingston out of New Brunswick, they use buckwheat a lot in their rotations, and he swears by it.
I like growing it. I know some of the greenhouses that I've heard in the past have used it in their small scale. So.
Well, if you want any information, I can put you in touch with Tim. He'd be more than happy to talk to you. He's a great farmer.
Yeah, I for grain I've seen it like pretty much a bushel and a half in 2 directions, and it is awesome for some other crop for weeds definitely, especially the red intelligent.
I was just curious how the panelists that have certified beef are marketing it. Are they marketing it directly, or are they going through how are they getting it to market? That is the other end of it.
The questions about marketing certified organic beef.
Speak to this.
Over the last several years, there's quite a few of us actually on this panel that have come together and formed a loose-knit group of marketing the cattle together. There are buyers in Ontario and Alberta, and previously there had been in the United States until some of that cool legislation came in. Now with the exchange, it sure would be nice to get a couple of those American buyers back in the market. But basically, we do market our cattle together. There is some producers that are marketing it on their own, but in general, we've been marketing ours as a group. I guess the other comment just on marketing organic cattle is that if you're thinking of transitioning your livestock to organic and you've traditionally been selling your calves right off the cow, that's not something that usually works well as far as trying to get an organic premium, because we want to make sure those calves are healthy. So if you would background them for at least 6 to 8 weeks, that's probably a suggestion I would like to offer.
Excellent. Well, thank you for. Oh, you want to? Sure.
I had one point to add on the marketing of organic beef. We're doing some with Mark, and we've also do some direct selling. And this year, DAL Meats in Killarney, they've actually gone through the accreditation process, so they can process organic beef. So if that's something you're into, and you want to do some direct marketing, or to stores or retail or whatever, they can do that. They're only provincially regulated, but that is another opportunity.
Nice.
Quick question for on your hay blends where you guys use as a green manure after, for I guess weed suppression as well. What are your typical hay blends? Like how much alfalfa to everything else are you putting in there? Percentage wise?
I guess for us, we're probably about 50-60% alfalfa, and the rest to be grass.
How many years are you keeping that stuff in the ground? Is it typically 2 or 3 years?
About 3 is for us. I'm not sure.
That's common. That's very common.
What about your pounds per acre for seeding rates on your hay? What are you typically running at?
Do you know what I mean?
8 to 10 is what I see a lot. I see generally 8 to 10, and I'm speaking general, because I see so many different operations.
Is that kind of what most of you guys are doing? That's what I do.
That'd be somewhere where we'd be, yeah. Like with alfalfa, or with everything mixed in together?
Either or. I guess we've done as much as 20 plus pounds an acre, and I will never go back to 8 or 10 pounds.
Okay.
If you end up having a script where you can't put that stuff in, you've got lots of plants in there. You have nice, small, thin stems. You always have a lush canopy in there. You have no weed issues after. And I've got a stand that's been wanting to break up for like 5+ years, and it's 13 years old, and it's now getting thin, but it's still amazing. Like we had it at 7, 8, 9 years, it was still producing really
Excellent. So you're recommending a much heavier seeding rate than what people have actually see.
Because I mean, if you have issues with weather that year or further on,
it can resolve it.
You still have lots of plants.
Well, we're going to have to move on now. It's time for the networking lunch where you can share this kind of good information. And please do, visit our sponsors. We wouldn't be here today without their support. Take a look at some of the books we have for sale. And once again, let's join me in thanking the panel for sharing their information. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful lunch. We'll be back together at 1 o'clock. So do the networking. And the gift basket thanks from 2 farm kids. So they're so small, but they're just a little thank you from 2 farm kids. That was great, guys. That was exactly what I was hoping.
Nailed it.
You nailed it. That's what you earned the big bucks. You earned the big bucks from us. And hopefully someday I'll actually have a budget where I can cover gas.
I was coming in anyway.
That's what I was hoping.